Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to help you get informed fast. We sift through a stack of sources, pull out the key insights, and tailor them for you. Today, we've got a fascinating set of materials. They really paint this vivid picture of a country, dealing with rapid change, huge ambitions, but also some very real human challenges. We'll be touching on quite a bit: urban resilience, financial reforms, big development programs, social issues like brain drain, and even a look at AI and us.
Yeah, and our job today is to really dig into that, extract the most important bits, connect those dots, because these topics might seem separate, but they often aren't, and help you understand what's really going on and, crucially, why it matters right now.
Expect some surprises, maybe a few aha moments along the way. Okay, let's unpack this. Where do we start? Right, let's kick off with Addis Ababa, specifically the flooding. It's become an almost familiar sight, hasn't it? Those scenes of torrential rain turning streets into basically brown rivers. There was that specific incident, July 24th, 2025, the OLA gas station and cafe on Menelik II Avenue, near St. Estefanus Church.
Right, I saw that report. The staff just had to stand there and watch. 50,000 birr worth of inventory, syrup, sugar, coffee beans just gone. Swallowed by muddy water.
And the manager's car got swamped too. Ended up costing, 115,000 birr for repairs? And insurance didn't cover a dime. Just a stark reminder, really.
Absolutely. And it's not just businesses feeling it.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
We heard from a taxi driver, Mulatu Ayalna. He's driven the Mexico Square to Ceres route for 15 years. He said the stretch near Bulgaria area is now treacherous. Potholes, standing water. He basically said the steering wheel just goes where it wants when it rains. You just pick the least bad lane.
And stories like that, they just highlight the core problem, don't they? Addis has this huge population, maybe over 5 million, though we don't have exact census data for ages. But the infrastructure is fundamentally not resilient. Roads end up acting like drains, riverbanks are treated like dumps, and concrete covers areas that used to soak up the rain.
So when it floods,
there's just nowhere for the water to go. It even impacts modern tech, like that businessman, Abel Temesgen.
Oh yeah, the one with the EV.
Exactly. Switched from a Land Cruiser to a BYD electric vehicle.
Then it stalled out on Summit Road in heavy rain. Kind of joke, my mistake was thinking I was driving a Land Cruiser. You have to drive an EV carefully.
Yeah.
Show the limits, right?
So, given all that, what are the underlying factors from like a water management perspective?
Well, hydrologically speaking, a big piece is just the sheer amount of rain in a short period. Almost 70% of the city's annual rainfall, that's 1,400 million liters, falls between June and September. Plus, the dry seasons bake the ground hard. So when the rain comes, it doesn't soak in, it just runs off faster.
And the rivers themselves?
The Cabina, Bantiquitu, Akaki Orki, they should be carrying water away, but they're choked, full of refuse, sediment. The Little Akaki in Colficarano, described as an open sewer. It's a perfect storm, really.
And it seems like everyone has a different explanation, or someone else to blame. How are the authorities responding?
Well, the city authorities do acknowledge it. They've got a special task force. They've built 64 flood walls, and there's the big Riverside Project. But didn't the Riverside Project offices themselves flood?
Ironically, yes. The ones behind the Guion Hotel. Workers were apparently wading through sludge. It's quite telling. ASCRA, the roads authority, they say they've done loads of drainage work, expanded pipes, but they point the finger at concrete invasions into flood buffers. They say, what used to be absorbed by the ground is now blocked by concrete. That runoff ends up on roads.
But hydrologists like Mamo Kassin at Addis Ababa University have a harsher take, don't they? He called the whole drainage design infeasible.
He did. His argument is more systemic. He says the design just doesn't account for the city's terrain, that massive 1,100-meter elevation swing, plus the fragmented layout. For him, it's fundamentally a policy and design failure, not just about construction quality.
It raises that deeper question about the whole approach, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
So if it's not just construction, maybe design.
Yeah.
What about other things? Like, is garbage blocking the drains the main issue? Or maintenance?
That's interesting, too. The Cleansing Management Agency, Germa Hailu, actually pushed back on the garbage idea. He said, drainage systems are clogged by wet waste, mostly mud. He even admitted sometimes the mud they clear out just ends up back in the drain.
Wow.
And then there's the issue of open manholes, almost 2,600 citywide. Theft, damage. It all adds up. Now connect that to the bigger picture. Climate models suggest dry spells could get 53% more frequent by 2040. That means even harder ground, combined with clogged rivers, concrete sprawl. The water has nowhere to go but into people's lives. It's complex. Many factors playing together.
So, For you listening, if you're living in a fast-growing city like this, where nature just does its thing regardless of plans, what does it all mean? How should the government square that circle, the ambition versus the environmental reality? Especially when people like Gedashu Shifrov suffer huge personal losses from what experts are calling design flaws. It's a tough one. Okay, let's shift focus now. Moving from the physical infrastructure to something equally vital, but maybe less visible, the financial sector. Ethiopia is making some really big moves here, unprecedented reforms. Like Gada Bank just launching its securities dealer subsidiary. 80 million birr initial investment. That makes them only the second firm after Ethio Fidelity Securities to get into this regulated space. That feels significant.
It absolutely is. What's fascinating here is that it signals the actual infrastructure for capital markets is starting to take shape. It's part of the government's broader push, capital markets, central depositories, digital trading. But, and this is a big but, commercial viability is still a huge question mark. The market itself is still very young. Few listed companies, not a massive investor base yet.
Right. And you have experts like Takedo Alamu, a finance professor, sounding a note of caution. Yeah. He basically asks, can the market really support 32 investment banks? He's urging them to find specific niches, not just copy each other. And then there's this other major development. The National Bank of Ethiopia, the NBE, laying down the law. All commercial banks have to hit 5 billion birr in paid-up capital by July 2026. Or face forced mergers. Look at Ahadu Bank. New president Ludi Gedabisa comes in. Their capital is under 2 billion birr right now. This is despite, a huge profit surge, generating $88 million in Forex last year. It seems like a really aggressive push from the NBE.
It does, and it raises that crucial question. Is just demanding more capital the best way to build resilience? Or could it backfire? Financial analyst Abdumanan Mohammed, for instance, calls Ahadu Bank undercapitalized, even with its profits. He stresses they need tech innovation, strategic partnerships, not just more cash on paper.
And what about the impact on the newer banks?
Well, Mikias Mulugeta, a consultant, calls it a shotgun wedding. Many of these banks are less than 10 years old, set up specifically to serve areas others weren't reaching. He warns that rushing mergers might make the system look bigger, but not necessarily better. It could narrow the focus, maybe even damage that local trust they built up.
And with the NBE licensing investment banks so quickly, CBE Capital, Wigig, and Awash are already in task.
Yeah.
Does that speed create risks around integrity?
That's a definite concern. Aminu Nuru, another analyst, points out that while having investment arms within banks can diversify income, in Ethiopia's nascent and fragile system, the risk of conflicts of interest is really high, especially if they share leadership. And he questions that the minimum capital 25 million birr for some, 100 million for subsidiaries, is actually enough to underwrite major deals. It seems quite low.
Yeah, I could see that. And this idea of Chinese walls separating teams, the worry is they often exist more on paper than in practice, right? That opens the door to bias, insider trading, market manipulation. Right. Especially with the Ethiopian Securities Exchange, the ESX, getting ready to list companies, likely banks and insurers first.
Exactly. So the real challenge, connecting this to the bigger picture, is for regulators and the banks themselves to ensure these investment arms are truly autonomous. Separate boards, separate management, that's key for credibility and stability as the market develops. Without that genuine separation, those risks you mentioned, they're very real.
So thinking about all these financial reforms, the capital markets push, the bank capitalization demands, the new investment banks, what really stands out to you? How should policymakers navigate this? Balancing the drive for a modern system with protecting these new institutions and keeping the market clean. All right, let's switch gears again. From finance to agriculture, and specifically this crop called NSET. It's indigenous, often called false banana. Mm-hmm. The government has just launched a big 10-year national NSET development flagship program, the NET-DFP. The goal is huge. Transform it from just a local food staple into a commercial powerhouse.
The targets are incredibly ambitious, aren't they? Generate over 13 billion birr, feed 40 million people, earn nearly $5 billion in exports, create 1.2 million jobs, all by 2033. It's a massive vision.
So how are they planning to achieve that? What's the innovation here?
Well, what's fascinating is how science is tackling the old problems, like the processing time. Traditionally, it takes, 90 days? Very labor intensive. But researchers at Armament University have cut that down to just 7 days. They're using these communal machines, electric or diesel, costing maybe 100,000 to 200,000 birr, to process the pseudostems into flour much faster.
Wow, that's a game changer.
It really is. And they've also developed special pottery containers to get rid of the odor and preserve the flour better. making it much more commercially viable.
And it's not just about the tech, right? It's also about empowering communities.
Exactly. It encourages mothers, young people to form cooperatives, and you're already seeing startups like Lucy Enset bridging that gap. They're using tissue culture, blending the flour with things like moringa, and selling a wheat-like product for 300 birr a kilo. It's tradition meeting enterprise.
But making that leap from the village level to international markets, that must come with challenges.
Oh, absolutely. This raises an important question about scalability and risk. A huge one is Enset bacterial wilt, EBW. It can literally wipe out an entire crop, 100%. Plus, rolling out those processing machines, it's vulnerable to inflation, currency issues, makes the cost difficult for some areas, and honestly, despite the big export targets, the international market for Enset outside East Africa, it's still largely untested. So, huge potential, but significant hurdles too.
Okay, another big ambition, reforming state-owned enterprises, SOEs. There's a new directive from the Federal Public Procurement and Property Authority, the FPPA, issued back in May 2025. And it brings over 40 major SOEs. We're talking Ethiopian Airlines, Ethio Telecom, the big players under unified digital oversight for the first time. What's the thinking behind that?
Yeah, what's fascinating here is the push to end the old ways, fragmented, often opaque practices. This directive basically forces these SOEs onto the same page, integrating their procurement with the federal government's digital systems. The FPPA gets explicit audit powers, and it pushes them hard towards using the e-government procurement system, the EGP. Soon, it'll be mandatory. The idea is simpler audits, real-time monitoring. It's about transparency and control.
And I heard it also gives them some new flexibility, like direct purchasing, which wasn't allowed before for government agencies, and looking at whole life costs instead of just the initial price tag.
That's right. Those flexibilities are meant to make things more efficient, maybe get better value in the long run. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the stated goal is to break old habits, favoritism, institutional nepotism, and create a more competitive internal market among public entities. But, people like Tadesse Kabe, who used to be at FPPA, raise red flags. He points to institutional bottlenecks, weak contract management. He stresses that you really need to upskill the procurement staff for these new systems and oversight to actually work. It's not just about the rules, it's about the capacity to implement them.
Now here's something that really caught my eye. A commentary by the former finance minister, Soufiane Ahmed, titled, "Africa's Debt is an Opportunity." That definitely goes against the usual narrative.
It's a really provocative piece, isn't it? His core argument is fascinating. Debt is not the enemy. The real problem, he says, is the quality of its deployment and the failure to extract value from it. Okay. He argues that if you borrow smartly for things that boost productivity, like roads, energy, irrigation, that debt can actually drive long-term growth and resilience. It can basically pay for itself over time. It reframes the whole debate.
Which raises that question he poses. Why should African countries hold back from borrowing when they lack long-term capital, have small tax bases, and underdeveloped capital markets? He challenges that international post-HIPC lens, the focus on strict debt ratios for poor countries. He said what really matters is whether the borrowing fuels genuine economic transformation.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's really a call for Africa to assert its right to finance its own development. Guided by prudence, yes, but also by ambition. It's about mastering debt, not being paralyzed by fear of it, taking control of the narrative.
And finally, on the development front, let's look at the Green Legacy Initiative. The recent push aimed to plant 700 million trees in a single 24-hour period, July 31st, 2025. Officials claim they beat the target even. The Prime Minister called it a miracle.
The scale is just mind-boggling, isn't it? Over 29 million volunteers mobilized. That's incredible. But there's also some significant skepticism. What's fascinating here is the critique. The article really questions the logistics planting 35 seedlings per person in 24 hours, nonstop, and the implied cost. Over 84 billion birr annually it's sustained, which is like 4.5% of the whole federal budget. It's a staggering figure.
And it contrasts sharply with successful reforestation elsewhere, like the U.S. or South Korea, right? Those took years, decades even, not a single day. Plus, the article mentions hazards, heavy rain washing away seedlings, low national survival rates, maybe only 20-30%. It makes you question the long-term impact of that one-day push.
Which raises the really important question. Is this initiative about numbers or about nature? The focus on fast-growing species like eucalyptus or acacia, they provide timber, sure, but they're not great substitutes for native forests. They can even make droughts worse in some cases. The article's conclusion is pretty blunt. Saplings cannot be rushed like election rallies. It argues that unless the focus shifts from these stopwatch heroics to actual long-term care, steady husbandry, the green legacy might just be remembered as a big count, not a lasting green canopy. It calls for a shift from spectacle to strategy, nurturing forests, better monitoring, ensuring communities have legal rights to the trees, real sustainability.
So looking across these diverse strategies, the NSET program, SOE reforms, the debt perspective, the tree planting, how do you see them balancing that grand vision with the messy realities of implementation and making it last? It's a recurring theme, isn't it? Now let's turn to something deeply human and quite critical. Migration, specifically the brain drain. The article mentions a rideshare driver asking, "So when are you leaving?" That question becoming a kind of benchmark for ambition. That says a lot.
It really does. And what's fascinating, or perhaps alarming, is the sheer scale of this one-way traffic of human capital. Look at hospitals they're struggling with skeleton crews. A 2023 survey found nearly 3,500 doctors, nurses, anesthetists left in just 3 years. That leaves the physician-to-patient ratio at something like 1 to 10,000. Way, way below WHO minimums. Universities are seeing it too. Over 400 senior lecturers left in 2022, heading for Canada, Australia, the Gulf, and students on scholarships. Many just don't plan on coming back. The loss of expertise is immense.
And it's not just the highly educated, is it?
Not at all. Between 2018 and 2023, over 300,000 Ethiopians went abroad for low and mid-skilled jobs. The IOM estimates maybe another 70,000 leave every single year.
When you hear sentiments like "to succeed is to leave," or friends telling people who've left don't come back, it points to something deeper, a kind of despair, doesn't it? That Gallup poll showing nearly half of 18 to 29-year-olds wanting to leave permanently.
It paints a stark picture, and while remittances are significant, over $5 billion last year, it raises this crucial point. Remittances cannot replace talent. Money is important, yes, but economies are built by people. People who build things, fix things, imagine things. So the fundamental challenge connecting it all is, how do you make staying feel like a future, not just a compromise? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's incredibly hard to shift that perception.
Now, shifting tone slightly, we have a very personal story. It's about resilience, but also touches on some broader societal issues. A 22-year-old house helper. At 16, she decided to work for 7 years, sacrificing her own education just so her high school sweetheart could go to university. That's incredible dedication.
It is. But what's fascinating and heartbreaking is the betrayal. When he graduated, he told her she was just a housekeeper, that they weren't on the same level anymore. He just abandoned her. No savings, no diploma. Her family had disowned her. It's a brutal illustration of how women, especially those without much power, can be expected to give everything and get nothing.
Just devastating. Yeah. But her reaction, it wasn't anger or revenge. It was, "I want to go back to school."
Incredible courage, isn't it? After all that, to choose redemption, to choose herself. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, her story kind of holds up a mirror to a culture that sometimes praises girls based on how much they endure, measuring their worth by self-sacrifice. The piece concludes so powerfully, love that demands erasure isn't love, it's abandonment dressed as devotion. Her strength in refusing to be defined by his betrayal and choosing her own future, it rewrites the ending. It's about reclaiming your own story.
Wow. Okay, one more area to explore, shifting to technology and, well, philosophy almost.
Yeah.
Our relationship with artificial intelligence. Tech leaders like Zuckerberg, Sam Altman, they're really pushing this idea of AI friends and companions.
Yes, and what's fascinating here is the strong counter-argument presented in one of our sources. It basically says, hold on, AI systems are machines. They aren't truly intelligent or emotional or ethical in the human sense. They're described as data-driven tools designed to mimic cognitive functions for specific tasks. They lack genuine understanding, real moral agency. The example given is powerful. A medical robot programmed to cry when a patient cries. It doesn't feel sadness. And crucially, that same robot would follow in order to, say, slap a patient with equal precision and with the same lack of authenticity and self-awareness. That distinction between simulation and reality is absolutely vital.
Which leads to this question about the language we use. The piece argues database systems, or DS is a more honest term. It reflects what they actually do process data and what they can't do be aware, understand context. And it criticizes the black box problem too. Algorithms being untraceable, unpredictable, potentially biased, leading to unfair outcomes.
Exactly. And connecting this to the broader context, the warning is pretty stark. Big tech, which the piece argues has already isolated people with anti-social media, is now selling a vision where AI replaces human connection. The final message is a call to clarity, really. To protect our freedom and dignity, we must not allow machines to masquerade as what they are not. It's about understanding the tool for what it is and not letting it pretend to be human.
So thinking about these human dimensions, the societal cost of brain drain, the resilience shown in the face of betrayal, the ethical tightrope we're walking with AI. What really stands out to you from these stories emerging from a world changing so fast? Well, that was quite the journey through our sources today. We've covered so much ground, from the very real struggles of urban flooding in Addis and the ambitious financial reforms to huge national projects, the quiet crisis of brain drain, and these really deep questions about humanity and technology.
It's really compelling, isn't it, how each thread, infrastructure, finance, agriculture, individual lives, they all weave together. What's fascinating is seeing that constant tension between the grand plans and the messy on-the-ground reality. It really underscores that progress is almost never a straight line. It takes incredible resilience.
And that's what we try to do here, help you cut through all the noise, get to the core of what's shaping things, and hopefully spark some of those aha moments. So thinking about everything we've discussed, what does it all mean for you? How do these challenges, rapid urbanization, economic shifts, even how we define connection, how do they demand more from us? Not just smarter policies maybe, but a deeper understanding of people, of resilience.
Yeah, it definitely raises an important question for each of us, doesn't it? In this world that's always changing, what personal deep dives do we need to take? Maybe it's understanding these complex systems better, or maybe it's something as simple yet profound as supporting someone trying to rebuild their future after a setback.
Lots to think about. Until next time, keep digging for those insights and keep thinking critically about the world around you.